Rudoh, welcome.
Hey man,
Welcome
how
to
are you?
Electronic Music Live. Yeah, I'm good. It's been a minute, and I'm, been wanting to chat with you for some time now. Thanks for coming on board, and I'm really fascinated to learn about Pakistan's electronic music scene, and I know you have a really good knowledge and with a window into what has been happening over there, into the scene and what's emerging, and also learning about your experiences in the music scene there as well. And first of all, tell me a little bit about your childhood and where you were born and how you ended up in Boston.
So I was born in Karachi, Pakistan, as you mentioned. Um, I was born in Karachi, and then obviously went to school like the rest of the kids. And around, I think when I was 18, I decided to go to college. And I applied. I mean, most kids in Pakistan. Well, no, I wouldn't say most kids, but anyone who's fortunate enough to travel outside of Pakistan for education, they were all applying to the US, and a lot of them my friends, and I decided to do the same thing. So I ended up in Boston, and I was studying economics, and I was trying to get into a law school.
And music came along.
I mean, so essentially, I think I was like maybe 15 or 14, and I was in a lot of school bands, and me and my mates were always like making music, and I think we discovered music production at a very early. I mean, we were one of the maybe few people in Pakistan to ever stumble upon the software and start making music with it. And then when I went to Boston, I was flunking out of all of my classes because I didn't really go to school because I was just making music. I had an SP 404, and I had a laptop, and I would just stay in all day and make music. And I think, during that time, the US, still, I think they have this law where you can't drink if you're 21. So everybody used to make fake IDs and go to clubs over there. And I used to be like, nah, I'm good. I'm just going to stay home, work on tracks. And I had a couple of friends who were in Berkeley School of Music. So I used to like on and off, like meet them, collaborate with them. And I just realized like, this is what I want to do. And I remember that it's such a so basically when I got to college over there, they ran out of student accommodations, so they hosted some of the kids who basically paid for accommodation but weren't given any. They had them stay at that like a 4-star hotel or something. I don't remember the name. We had hotel rooms for a couple of months. And I remember that right above the lobby, there was like the first floor, the second floor, there was a grand piano there. So I used to like sneak up there like at like 4 a.m. with like a microphone and like some headphones and my laptop and just like sample the piano. And I'll be walking down at like 5 a.m. and I'll see all my friends coming back from the party. And just like, I guess I never really got into that bit at all. I was too into making music. So I kind of steered away from it, and eventually I got kicked out of school.
Was this all in Karachi?
No, this was all in Boston.
This was in Boston at uni. And tell me a bit about Karachi though, like in your early childhood. What was it like growing up there? And I find it super interesting that there wasn't a lot of access to electronic music technology, or were there other people? Because I've heard you mention before that it was very limited, extremely limited.
Oh, absolutely. I think when I say this out loud, it just sounds strange, but I mean, it is what it is, because I think I was one of the maybe like 4 or 5 electronic musicians to come out of there. Like there weren't a lot of people that were doing this when we started. I remember essentially what happened was a friend of mine who I was in a band with, his older brother was the first RBMA participant. And this was the state. I think this one was the one that happened in Melbourne. I think it was 2004 or 2002. I think Flying Lotus was on the same batch. And a bunch of really other incredible artists. And I remember my brother. He came back, and then I met them like a year after that. And he had Flying Lotus's first EP on a CD when it hadn't even been released. And we were super young. We were like 14, 13-year-old kids. And he was much older than us. And he made us listen to all this music. It was like stuff that was coming from LA, like Dateless, No Such Thing, the Low End Theory Gang, Brain Feeders, Sam I Am, Razji, Dim Light. So we were listening to all this incredible music that was coming from LA, like beats and stuff. And we were all and we were in a band back then. And we used to like love Radiohead and Pink Floyd, and we used to like make original music, but also cover music. And we heard all this electronic music that came, and we were just shocked. We didn't. We were just taken aback. Like, how do you make this music? How do you make these sounds? So his older brother gave us a copy of Reason. The fella had Reason 3, and he had downloaded that through a dial-up connection. There was no DSL or broadband at that point. There was just the dial-up where someone picked up the phone at your house.
Yeah.
The internet would die. Yeah. So this guy spent like 2 days downloading a pirated copy of Reason 3, and he passed it on to all of us. And one by one, we just started getting really into it. And as we started getting into it as producers, the band also disbanded because we just realized that we can do anything we want with the software, and we don't really like need to be in a band anymore. So it sprung out like 5 or 4 different electronic musicians just from there. And I still remember because we used to make a lot of tracks, and we used to have this thing where we would meet up every week, end of the week on a Sunday, and we'd just like share our music. And we'd also like shit on it, but we also give each other like critical feedback. And we were like really young, and because we didn't know what to do with the music. So we're like, okay, every week we get together, and whatever we made during the week, and you have to picture this as like 14, 15, 16-year-old kids who were very new to making electronic music, and they're like extremely inspired by the West, and they're like sharing music every week. So I think it someone made a very, very small community of like people who were just into this, and then we were like, okay, we need to venture out and find more people like us. And I remember I got together with a friend of mine. He's my best mate. His name is Sazan, excellent musician, artist as well. And we started this thing called Karachi Detour Rampage, which was actually named for a track that was basically when we were a band, we made a song called Karachi Detour Rampage. The band was called Mole, and we used that track name to make this like umbrella for everyone we reached out to. So we hit up. Back then, it was all about MySpace, so we started hitting up people on MySpace who were like remotely even close in Pakistan, and we found like 7, 8, or 6 other people, and we ended up taking over. Like a school for children to learn how to dance and play instruments. We took this like really small school and we turned it into a club, and we called all these guys over who were basically making electronic music to come share the music. So whatever we were doing together at the end of the weekend as a small group, we just expanded that into like 8 or 10 other people, and we kind of made it into a gig. And I remember this. It's such a fond memory. Like when I walked into that school and I looked at it, I was like, yeah, I can do something with it. And then I went back to my friends like, okay, we need a guy for visuals, we need equipment, we need this, blah blah blah. And just you have to picture that we're like 16, 17, like super young, like 15 years ago. And we just went, and I remember tying up. So we went to a carpenter, and we made them, because our logo was a hexagon, and we made them cut up a canvas in the size of a hexagon, but it was too big to carry that, and we didn't have money to get transportation, so we tied it above our car, but because of the wind, it was constantly flying off the car. So I remember all four of my friends, like from each side of the window, was just like holding onto this piece of canvas, and we would drive really slow because the wind was too intense. And literally, when we got there, like our hands were like all cut up because of the wood, and the pressure of the wind. Anyway, we stacked that up. We put the sound in. I remember the owner of the school came in, and she's like, "This looks like a club in Europe." And we, mind you, we've never seen a club in our life. We don't know anything what it looks like. We don't know what we don't even know what a bar or club is. Like we had no idea. We knew what it was, but we had never been to one. So we just kind of like created it. Like, and she was much older. She had traveled, so she knew. And she was like, "This looks like a club from Europe." And it's like, we don't know what we're doing. We just want to do this. And from there, we met a lot of like-minded people who were kind of making music, electronic music, and everybody came, shared their stuff. And I remember like people playing their Reason in Ableton files, just like hitting spacebar and like just showcasing their music. And some people brought their SPs, and people who knew a little bit more brought a bit of a setup, and some guy came in with a darbuka and was collaborating. And this was like, what, 16 years ago, 15 years ago. So yeah, that was like one of the events that really propelled me into this direction.
Right. And as far as you're aware though, like this would be sort of the early parts of electronic music in Pakistan. Like these are sort of early days of a electronic music community emerging, as far as that you're aware of. I mean, do you recall people before you in other communities, like other older people, or that you may be aware of that were maybe experimenting with electronic sounds, with Pakistani sort of rhythms and sounds, or like, but this was a significant period, say early 2000s, where you recall this being a sort of a pivotal part of an emerging scene.
I think essentially what I would like to do here is talk about how the scene was focusing on alternative music. So if you were to take this as the emergence of alternative electronic music, then yeah, it was definitely its first, for sure. But I think when we were kids, when I was 16 or 15, I remember there were few names, like people like Faisal Bey, Sajid and Zishan. There was Vital Signs, and these guys were using synthesizers and drum machines. So there was this influence of electronic instruments and sound, but it wasn't as strong, or it wasn't as alternative, I would say. Yeah, there were a few people doing this, and obviously we used to hear stories about they would have these massive raves at the beach. This is like 25 years ago, when things were much more politically stable, and crime wasn't such a big of a deal. And we used to hear this all the time, and we used to hear that this is a cycle, like things get really good and then they get really bad, and so it's like a constant cycle. Back then, I remember I used to hear stories from the same friend my friend's older brother, who gave us Reason and introduced to us to electronic music. He used to tell us there used to be massive raves at the beach, and they used to have like decks and CDJs, and there used to be like thousands of people and like popping all sorts of things, and then a couple of bad accidents happened, like a couple of people who got shot, or like some bad fights that went down and just kind of shut everything down. So there was always an idea of like people getting together to rave and like listen to house music or like techno, but I was probably not even born or too young to even like understand that kind of situation. But we did hear stories from back in the day.
And how far back do you think that early sort of like dance music culture started to emerge in Pakistan, even in small fragments? Would you say as far back as the 80s, or would be about the early 90s or mid 90s that this sort of started?
I think I wouldn't be so educated on this. Like I wouldn't, if I had to, like, maybe not a guess, but I just think late 80s and early 90s, mid 90s kind of region.
Right.
That's where a lot of things were happening, and it was just, I think, a better time for the country as well. Like there weren't so many restrictions. It was easy to do things as opposed to now. So I
Right.
think if it had to really be on its peak at that time, it must have been that time. Yeah.
Was there anyone from that era making music, like that making house or techno at that point
I think there
that
was
you know of?
maybe Faisal. Yeah, Faisal Beg. I know he's a excellent musician, guitarist, and he was definitely making some bits of electronic music way back. And then there was also
Mm.
Sajid and Zishan, but they had more of a different kind of indie sort of approach to it. I wouldn't say it was house music, but like yeah, they weren't a lot, maybe one person, two people altogether.
Yeah,
I
and
think
like
more people were interested in DJing.
and because of the restrictions, through government and things like that back then, like is obviously this had a huge impact on a music culture to kind of start. And you mentioned starting and stopping, and that's why it was kind of like always difficult to be sustained. But that seems to be different now. Like it seems, you know, recently the boiler room that happened. There's more, and with social media and things now, there's a bit more focus on there's awareness towards what's coming out of Pakistan, and there are more players. There are more people making music and being active than ever in sort of like music or dance music history of Pakistan's dance music history. So now is an interesting time.
Yeah, it has grown quite a bit. I moved away around, I think, a little over 3 years ago. And at that time, I could feel that things were happening. So essentially, there were different genres of music that people were getting into, and there were little pockets of those genres popping up. You had people who were really into progressive house, which are doing a progressive house nights. The people who do really into minimal and tech house, they were doing minimal tech house nights, and they've sort of sustained their following, and they've been growing it. So there are parties happening in Karachi, Lahore, Islamabad, and it's become more and more common to people have become more and more common to the idea of raving and having big parties and doing things with it. So there's definitely a much bigger ecosystem than what it was like 15 years ago. But in comparison to maybe like something like in Europe or even East Asia, I wouldn't even. It would be really hard to compare them. But like, yes, if I was to compare this like 15 years ago, it's grown quite a bit. And I think also just like the ease of how easy it's become to like share information around the globe, and how accessible things have become, even to learn how to become a DJ or how to become a producer, or the tutorials for everything. You could just any day decide to get up and start learning something, and within a year or over a year, you can become really good at it, just because of the sheer amount of information that's out there. And with obviously the advancement of internet in our country, thankfully, a lot of these kids have been picking up information from all over the world. It's just on their fingertips, and they're learning, and they're becoming much better. And the little communities, the producers, more with DJs obviously, but there's somewhat of a balance, I guess, and people are just getting into it. May it be through the skills of DJing or production. It's just that it's growing, and there are some people who are financially benefiting off it as well. So which gives it this this career is a viable career, that you could maybe make money off music. It's a tough one. It's an extremely tough one, but I guess like we're on the tracks to that point. It could take a couple of more years for sure, because it's not easy to do these things, and there's a bit of a stigma, a cultural, religious stigma against these things. So trying to create an income through music is difficult if you're not doing pop music, and if you're doing alternative music. And then obviously like this whole nightlife, DJing, getting, messed up, partying, it's also like looked down upon. So it's a head-on battle, and it will take a bit of time, maybe more time, maybe not even my lifetime, but it's a start. It's a stepping stone to maybe much, much bigger possibilities in the future. Who knows? But yeah,
There's a promising economy, a dance music or music economy that's emerging. You feel like it seems promising to someone.
it's super in its infant stage, like, but
Yes,
you can,
yes.
if you have a bit of vision, you can see us going somewhere. If God forbid things don't get too bad in the country, and because right now
Sure.
country's struggling with a lot of issues, and if things were to get better, I'm sure the music scene would also benefit from it. But this is a small start, a peek into what the future could be if things were to go right. Um, and I mean, it's still difficult to do things, so which is probably the biggest deterrent. But like, it is possible for it to become a scene later on. Right now it's really tiny, but it has the potential to to become something if the overall condition of the country was to improve.
Yeah, because what we're seeing more of now are all these sort of countries that we wouldn't expect dance music to exist, or even a scene to exist. And we're seeing more and more countries around the world where there's a vibrant scene emerging in different territories that weren't commonly looked at before. And now there's an interest, and we're seeing more and more of these pockets where there's dance music communities emerging, and their own take on it, their own spin on it. I recently spoke with someone in India, and we were talking about Pakistan and and how, like, if you wanted to tour an artist, can you include Pakistan, in that now? And it's still kind of a little bit difficult to do that. Like, if you wanted to tour an artist through India and Pakistan, it's not exactly, ready for that just yet. What are your thoughts on that?
Honestly, it's funny you mentioned this. I think about this a lot because I've been invited to India a couple of times, and I went and played magnetic fields, like, I don't know, like 6 years ago or something, in a while. And I do think about this a lot because I've seen the scene grow. I've seen the Indian scene grow exponentially in the last 10 years. And if things were like if both the political situation was on good terms, and if traveling was really easy between the countries, we could benefit off each other. Like, it could become a very strong circuit because they have great bookings. I think if we were ever to reach a point where politically things are stable in India, that would mean then there would be more room to do things in the country. What I'm trying to say is that if we were to reach this political cohesion with them, then the country is doing well, and like, maybe things are moving towards a more progressive future. And if that's happening, then I'm sure the music scene would also benefit from it. And if that was to happen, I think within India and Pakistan there would be a sixth circuit between, like, Lahore, Karachi, Bangalore, Mumbai, Delhi, Goa. If you were to connect all these cities, you could have an amazing circuit. Yeah, it would be sick. It would
absolutely.
Yeah, I think about this a lot. Like, it could be a very, very powerful scene, but yeah, sadly, we're just too busy. People are too busy bickering about things that really don't matter. Maybe they do matter to someone, but, like, I mean, for the overall being of people, it just kind of, arbitrary.
Well, hopefully we see that. Like, my take on it is, I feel like Pakistan might be where India was 10 years ago. So maybe this is the beginning of a new era for Pakistan, providing that like you said, there's no, issues that put a stop on industries and things again and time again, like in the past. Hopefully there's a consistency, and the economy grows, and industries grow. After seeing the Boiler Room, there's obviously people there. There's obviously like music there, and there's obviously a scene that wants to be heard and seen and express and get music out there and wanting to develop.
People want to party.
It could, yeah.
Just want to have a good time. It's Karachi, Lahore, whichever city you want to take. Like they're tough places to live in, and they're very difficult to get by. And I think at the end of every week, everyone just wants to blow off some steam, have a party, listen to some music and a good sound system. Very much so how people in the West do it, but it's just so difficult to do it in Pakistan. Yet people are still pushing through, which is the best part, I guess.
Is that why you live in Dubai now? Because you feel that, in previous years, it's been difficult to try to sustain a music career of some kind, even though you might, while you may not be able to do it full time in Dubai, it's still more consistent.
I think essentially the reason why I left for Pakistan were a couple of personal reasons as well, but the larger weightage of why I left was because economically it wasn't doing well, and I wanted to obviously make more money, be in a place with more economic and political stability, and Dubai is the utopian haven for that. So I mean, a lot of people in Pakistan, like a lot of my friends who crossed 30 or even after crossing 25, 30, they start thinking of ways to get out of that city, because it just gets too much and it's very difficult to get by, and financially you have to struggle a lot, especially if you're an artist. I used to run a studio in Karachi and I was doing well for a fine, but then when the political and economic situation starts getting worse, brands that give out marketing budgets and studios like me that I was running were dependent of these budgets would get slashed down in when faced with like a bad economic situation. So the studio started doing not so well. I wasn't making much money. I was dealing with a lot of terrible clients. A lot of them don't know what they want, and it was just becoming a very tiresome job, and I wasn't making enough money. So in my head, this thing clicked. I was like, I could do something else that requires the same amount of work, and I could make double the money and still have time to make music. And the only thing that clicked was Dubai, because my father has been living here for 20 odd years, and he was telling me for a while, he's like, I think you should move here, and I think you might like it. And when I first moved here, it was very difficult, obviously, but now thankfully everything is quite stable, making decent money, making time out from music, running the label. So yeah, like it's just anyone after 30, if they can find an escape, if they're privileged enough or fortunate enough, and they can find a way to get out, they will definitely take that route. Because as I said, like there is hope for a better lifestyle there, better lifestyle for artists and the electronic music scene, but maybe not right now, and it'll take its time. As you said as well, it's like 10 years, India 10 years ago. It's something of that sort. Maybe a few more years I would add to that, but yeah, it's pretty much spot on. You're right about that. So, we only live once, and we only live that many years. So everybody just, at this point, all my friends is just trying to find ways to kind of go somewhere else and start a new life or get a second chance.
Have you thought about like, if it is such an early time on the timeline, maybe is that like a good thing for someone wanting to set up shop or start now in planting seeds and helping develop the scene there, or is that just like a really hard kind of ambition to because that's it's a big commitment, and we've seen people in India do this where they've started from grassroots, and that you could say that is why there is a much more thriving music scene, independent music scene there now, because of some of the players that did this, that started to build some sort of infrastructure. So yeah, my question is like, have you thought about trying to be part of that and contribute back to early foundations of an infrastructure for Pakistan? Because there are so many people who are Pakistani that are but are the diaspora that are outside, that are always wanting to kind of come back to Pakistan and contribute, but don't actually necessarily live there.
With all due respect to all the Pakistanis living abroad that want to come back and set up shop or want to help the scene, it's always very short-lived, because they're not used to the hardship that come with doing music in Pakistan. So they might come for like a month and a couple of weeks, and that's it. And I don't blame them, because they've grown up with an infrastructure, a level of standard of living. And in Pakistan can get really difficult, because like you don't have electricity, you don't have clean water. There's a constant struggle. The roads are terrible. There's severe electricity issues, which has been going on for years and years and years. You'd just be doing a show and electricity is gone. What are you going to do about it? And the lot of just to throw a night is very, very difficult. Like you have to get 2 generators, one for a backup and one that's running, one for lights and one for sound. There's so much that you have to do just to run a night. And it's interesting that these guys want to come back and explore the scene and do something with it, but they're very quickly realize the hardships that come with it. And I don't blame them. Actually, it's difficult to. I mean, if we're trying to get out of it, so I wouldn't blame them to not find it feasible for themselves. And as it comes to like making a better infrastructure on the grassroots levels for where the music scene is right now, I do agree. Like there are a couple of early players who are still involved. They're still throwing shows. They're still doing parties and they've been building the scene for sure. There's so many of them. Well, not too many of them, but they are doing it. But I think for myself personally, if I was just talk about myself, I don't know. I started Forever South with a friend of mine, which is most likely. I know when I say this, it just sounds weird, and I hate saying the word the first of something. I don't believe in that idea, but it is true that it was like the first electronic music label to ever exist in that country. And I started that with a friend of mine, and we got tons of press all over the world. We won Pitchfork, we won the Fader, we won Resident Advisor, Mix Mag, Accelerator. Like we really went far and wide, and everybody was really interested. Like, why are these children in Pakistan making music? And it was an interesting concept for a lot of publications to cover. And we did a lot of shows. We released a lot of music, inspired a bunch of people, I'm sure. And I think for my part, I think that was my, I don't know if legacy is the right word, or that was my contribution to the scene. And it took a lot out of me. I think emotionally it drains you. And at some point you just have to think about yourself, and you have to wonder, what do I want to do? Like, where, I listen to all this music coming out of Europe and the US, and maybe one day I want to go there and tour, and I want to play shows, and I want to play shows at club. And that's actually happening because I started focusing on myself, and I started getting away from the label and trying to help people and trying to throw shows and build a scene. And I've always been a very community oriented guy, and I've always believed in giving to the community and this constant cycle of give and take, and that's what really builds a strong community. And I think in my early years I did that a lot. And even when I was running my studio, I used to help a lot of upcoming younger engineers who weren't fortunate enough to go study about it or know much about it. And I used to help them, and I've always been doing that. But I think there was just a point like in my late 20s where I was just like, man, like I need to like start focusing on myself. And I think this is when I was moving to Dubai as well, like 4 years ago, and like maybe 5 years ago. I was just like, okay, from now on, like I went to Thailand to play a show, and it was a lot of fun, and I met a lot of interesting artists, and I was introduced to like different genres of music, and I just realized, I was like, man, you know what? I don't want to run a studio. I don't want to be constantly trying to throw shows in Pakistan. I don't want to run forever south. I don't want to do any of this. I just want to make music. I want to go back to what I started doing. Why I started this was because I enjoyed making music, and that's what I've always wanted to do. So I've just been like kind of focusing on how to get my music out there to different labels. I started my own label because I had a release that no one was willing to sign. So I was like, fuck it, I'm just gonna start my own label. And we made it into a vinyl release sort of label. I have another friend called Samir Arshad who runs this night in Thailand called Froundistan, and he's been involved in the scene in Thailand for quite a bit now. And together we met up on various occasions, and we realized that, okay, we're going to start a label together. And my first release did like quite well. I was kind of taken aback, and I realized, I was like, so this is that feeling when you kind of like focus on yourself and you focus on what you want to do as an artist and what it means to be an artist for you, and what it means to put your work out there and have it appreciated. So I've just been really like all about how I want to grow, and you know, as a musician or as an artist. And I would love to go back and start doing things again, but I think I just think I've done my part. I don't think I think there are more people who are much more well equipped and ready and have the kind of capacity and the level of energy to continue these things. I think I've kind of like grown out of it, and
yeah, it's interesting because we and like the whole looking after yourself. It because we've been, especially today too, we've been so we're still, the whole idea of community and building something with people is not a bad thing, but if you can't what good are you if you're not looking after yourself? You know, like if you look after yourself first, then you're able to contribute even more. And you know, so it's one of those things where I think there's no shame in that. You know, there's no shame in wanting to take care of your career and focus on that. What I've also found fascinating about you, Bilal, is your wide music taste in electronic music, and like you're able to produce all these different genres. And I've always found that like you and not just like, okay, you smash it, like you make really good different types of dance music, and you do it very well. How did that come about? Like, how did you learn to be able to make not just one sound, but various sounds?
So I don't know, like I feel like music production, like I know a lot of producers that I speak to, and they always tell me like you should focus on one style and kind of build on it, because it takes a while to get used to it and get better within that style. And I completely agree with them. I definitely agree with them. But I just feel like when you open Ableton or any other software, or even if you have hardware, it's not written there what you can make. You know what I mean? Like I don't open like nobody opens up an Ableton file and it says this can only make garage or this can only make drum and bass. This is a blank canvas. For me, it's a blank canvas, and you can make anything you like. And I also like enjoy the because like the certain techniques that you use in making house music that you could probably transfer off to like a D&B style track or garage or electro, and like you can share certain like elements between these genres within one. And I've just always found that very fascinating, and I really do enjoy like I definitely have phases like, okay, now I'm kind of sick of 4x4, so I'm just gonna work on break. I'm kind of sick of breaks now. I want to work on 4x4, and okay, I don't want to make 4x4. I just want to make some ambient music, or I just want to make some techno, or I just want to make some house music, and it just like keeps things fresh. I guess it just doesn't let me get bored. I guess I get too used to something, and then it kind of like starts getting to me. But yeah, and I remember, it's funny, if I try to really date this back to my early like start as a music producer. I think I always like had this like weird idea. Like I watch a lot. I still watch a lot of anime, right? I grew up watching a lot of anime, and the protagonist is like overly ambitious always, and he's always out to like prove everyone wrong. So like as a kid, I guess like that mentality kind of stuck with me, So when I was young, I remember being like, I think somebody said that, oh man, why don't you like focus on this? And I was like, oh, focus on this kind of music. I was like, no, I'm gonna do all of it, and I'm gonna do it really well. So I guess like kind of like the childish thing kind of stuck with me and ended up becoming a habit where I just like, you know what, I can make house music, I can make hip hop, I can make trap, I can make break. Nothing's stopping me. And I guess like I always was kind of, even to the producers that I look up to, they are very well versed in different genres. They can make so much different kind of stuff.
So the sounds that you do make though, where do like being you looking back at your early childhood and the accessibility to dance music, where did you come find it? Like where did you find your influences and inspiration from? Like being in Pakistan, and you mentioned before that you had the exposure to this, it sounds like this holy grail from Flying Lotus, and was passed to a Pakistani brother of yours, and you were able to hear these early sounds. But where else did you come across? Was it because of your fascination into Europe and the UK and US sounds?
Well, I think that was just like the opening the Pandora's box for us, because when we heard, I'm not, was it 1984 or 1983? I can't remember the album name for Flying Lotus. That's one of them. I feel a little embarrassed because it was like the reason why we started making music, why I started making music. And we heard that, and then my mate's brother came back after a week, and we had gone through Boards of Canada. We found Apex Twin, we found Venetian snares, we found a square pusher, where we just like spiraled into like, and of course Soulseek was a big influence. Like we had Soulseek, and we would just like download everything off it, and we like, none of us had traveled out of the country or been to a gig or been to a club. We didn't even know that clubs kind of existed, actually, to be very honest. We didn't know what the idea of these things were, and we just like kept downloading music off Soulseek, and we heard a track and like, oh, how did he make this? And then next thing you know, we opened up a software, and like 5 guys on the laptop just trying to figure out how to make this. Like, oh, I figured it out. And I remember I was this really amazing fond memory of there's this artist called Clark. He's on Warp Records as well, and he was a big influence on us. And there's an album that he made called Body Riddle, which is one of his earlier works, and we listened to it a lot. And there was one song in there where I think he was playing a glockenspiel or like something like that, and we sat there, and one of my friends was stabbing out the melody and was trying to figure out what the bass sounded like. So we were just like, whatever we heard, we were like, okay, guys, we got to figure out how to make this. okay, how do you? Oh, so I learned something new, and just like kept bringing new techniques into our group, and we kept sharing them, and that was it. It was just literally just the internet. We had nothing else that was bringing in these foreign sounds into our rooms. It was just literally the internet.
I noticed you've got some shows coming up this month. You're heading to Thailand again.
Yeah, so I'm
Is
playing
that-
Wonder Fruit on the 16th. Yeah, on the 16th, I'm playing Wonder Fruit there. And then Keep Hush is coming to Pakistan. I don't know if
Who's
you know,
that?
it's a UK-based platform. Keep Hush. It's a streaming platform.
And so you'll be going through Pakistan.
Yeah, so after I get done with Thailand, I'm going to go to Pakistan for Keep Hush, which is like a streaming platform, and they're doing a gig there, much like Boiler Room, but same people who are doing Boiler Room. Well, not the same people, just part of that team reached out to Keep Hush, and now they're doing like this thing in Karachi. So I'll be playing there, and then I've got
Cool.
Vietnam. 2 weeks after that, I'm playing in
Amazing.
Hanoi, this club called Savage. And I don't have a lot of gigs happening, but yeah. And then we're doing a show in Dubai as well.
That's great.
I know you and I have spoken about this a lot, and I finally got my bearings together and finally got something good. Because I guess like I hadn't played in Dubai either, and like 2 months ago I played a show and it was incredible. It was a lot of fun, and I think that's the kind of confidence I was waiting for. So now we're doing a show on the 20th in January in Dubai as well, which is basically the compilation launch for my label, Jugaar Records. We're putting out a 10-track double LP in the next 2 weeks. I'm getting a test pressing tomorrow, so we're putting it all out, and
Wow.
we're doing a launch party in Dubai, and we're doing a launch party in Bangkok, and then me and my friend are gonna travel to Vietnam for a gig, and then back to Pakistan, back to Dubai. So it's just like things that's sort of kicking up now.
Yeah, man. Congratulations. It's so cool. Good
Thank
to
you.
hear. Good to hear. Good to hear. Well, look, it was super interesting chatting with you today. I really loved getting all that insight on some Pakistani electronic music history, and a window into your world and your experiences. It was really great to chat with you. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for having me on board, James. And really hope to see you in person very, very soon.
Yeah, mate. For sure. Take care.